Welcome to the Coffee and Common Sense podcast with Todd and Linda. Each week, we'll be talking about what's in the news this week and what's happening around the good old Fresno and Clovis area. Hey, this is a no-spin zone too, so we'll be keeping it real. Now your hosts, Todd and Linda Mitchell.
So, Linda, how was your week?
It was really good. As you well know, we had a great trip this weekend out to Sycamore Island with Kobe. The weather was picture perfect, like literally.
It was.
Blue skies, white fluffy clouds, all the ponds and everything were very, very full. Everything was green. And
very green because of all the rain. So I ride my mountain bike out through there, and so I've clocked hundreds of miles and been out there a lot, but I've never seen that much water, nor have I ever seen it that green before.
Yeah, and Kobe had an amazing time. It's just so fun to watch him running wild, sniffing, smelling everything, jumping in the water with no fear, and just prancing around. It was just the funnest thing. He's 6 months old now, so although he's 60 pounds and looks kind of big, he's still a puppy.
And he's still growing, God help us. So, hey, speaking of Sycamore Island, so I am starting to hear this word, ChatGPT, coming up more and more and more. As a matter of fact, at the brokers breakfast that we were at last Friday, which was what, Linda? Explain what that was.
The brokers breakfast? It was just a meeting of brokers and office managers that the Fresno Association of Realtors put on. And they had a panel of 3 brokers who kind of talked about their experiences, what they're seeing, and things of that nature. And one of the brokers talked about ChatGPT. And there were blank stares throughout the whole room. Most people had no idea what it was. Todd and I kind of came upon this about 3 months ago. I was listening to a video by Jordan Peterson where he talked about it. And we'll do another video on that because there's a lot to talk about on ChatGPT. However, Todd?
Well, it's an interesting thing. And like Linda said, we can get into more detail on that later. But what it is basically an open source AI platform. So artificial intelligence, and everyone's talking about it right now. I'm seeing blog posts, I'm seeing YouTube videos, I'm seeing or hearing podcasts. Anyways, we've been dabbling with this for about 3 months now, as Linda said, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to test it out, because I've tested it with a few other things, but specifically for a blog post in regards to our trip to Sycamore Island. So what I did was I gave it several, maybe about 8 to 10 bullet point items about our trip that day, and I told it to write an 800-word blog post.
And it did, and it was pretty awesome. Todd had to make a couple of tweaks.
So I spent just a little bit of time word massaging it, probably not more than maybe a couple minutes. And I would be interested to hear what you guys have to think. So go to our website, gate12realestate.com, and then go to our blog tab, and you can read it and let me know if you think that I wrote it or it looks like a robot wrote it.
Yeah. So anyway, that was how our weekend was, and we also have, this week, we have great weather all the way through Saturday. Sunshine, our lows are in the mid-40s, and we're going to hit the mid-60s, I believe, so get out there, enjoy the week, because we're expecting rain again on Sunday.
Goodness, lots of rain, but we need it, so it's good.
Definitely.
I think I read a statistic just yesterday that we are, I think, 189% of normal.
Well, and for an area that has had a drought for so many years, it's welcome, but at the same time, it's getting a little old.
It's getting a little bit old.
So anyway, last week we talked about the Federal Reserve and the federal chairman and raising
the interest rates going up,
things like that. And you just don't know what's going to happen in a week. And here we are. Go ahead, Todd.
Wow, did you ever hit the nail on the head with that one? Wow, what a week that I guess we all experienced. Unless you're living under a rock, I'm sure that you have seen that we have had 2 of the largest bank crashes in all time. Well,
and I don't think people have to be living under a rock. I feel like these days, if you're watching the regular news outlet, they kind of like touch on it and then the squirrel went by and it was sunny. And so you don't get the gist of what happened with the squirrel and why it went by and what was going on. And that's what Todd is going to talk about right now.
Yeah, so I just want to give props to Al Gonzalez that posted some content. I think it was on Friday or Saturday that was very, very good for me. It's from a guy on Twitter named Brian O'Connor. And he outlines basically step by step what happened in some pretty easy to understand little screens that I'll put up on the screen over Linda's shoulder here. But let me read them in order and then you tell me what you think, okay?
All right.
Sound like a plan? All right. So some quick stats in case you're unfamiliar with SVP, which is Silicon Valley Bank. $190 billion in deposits as of 2021. Works with 50% of venture capitalist funded startups. Bought $80 billion in mortgage-backed securities. Now, customers are rushing to get their money out. Let's see what happened. CEO Greg Becker, he looks at SVP's finances and he's tense. You see, last year, SVP bought $80 billion in mortgage-backed securities. That worked until the U.S. government put their business in a tailspin. And we'll talk about that, too. If you have any questions, stop me. The government raised the return that you get from buying government bonds. So which would you rather buy? Number one, SVP's mortgage-backed securities, which are risky and also offer a low return, or U.S. government bonds, which have zero risk and a 2.5 times the return as the SVP.
Well, common sense will answer that for you, right?
Yeah, number two, right? So SVP's value falls fast. And Greg needs to change, he needs a change to keep SVP alive. So he decides to build a safety net in cash. In two moves. Number one, sell some of their portfolio, and number two, sell shares of SVP. Normally, that wouldn't be a big deal, but what they didn't know is that a business in San Diego is failing, and it's going to take SVP down with it. That business is Silvergate Bank, one of the most important banks in crypto, but its biggest client just failed, FTX. The FTX crash caused customers to pull $8 billion from Silvergate in January. So on March 8th, Silvergate closes its doors officially. The same day SVB announces its safety net, which is just really awful timing for them. The news sends startups into a panic. The bank that keeps their cash safe just warned that they need a safety net. After the FTX collapse, 100,000 tech layoffs, economic recession fear, and now Silvergate, customers scramble to save their cash and pull out of SVP.
But wait, there's more.
So basically it's about perception, and bank runs are all very much about perception. So how customers perceive your action is as valuable as the action itself. SVB announced their safety net on the same day as Silvergate's collapse. Customers perceived them to be related. It cost SVB $80 billion. That same action without the Silvergate fiasco would have maybe had a 10% impact. Customers are people too, with real emotions. So if you understand your customers' fears, you'll be able to manage their perceptions. Customers feel you understand them and trust you. During an economic uncertainty, trust always wins.
So also then on Saturday, a third bank also.
Yes. So
Signature?
it's kind of, so Wednesday we
Signature.
had Silvergate. Friday we had Silicon Valley Bank. And then on Saturday we had Signature Bank, which is based out of New York. What's interesting to me about Signature Bank, in addition to the fact that all three of these banks start with an S, which is interesting. They all sound a little bit alike. But Signature Bank, also, they were a crypto type bank. I think they were one of the first banks to take deposits in cryptocurrency. So it's just a really, really interesting time that we're having. A lot of really bad luck and bad timing for Silicon Valley Bank. But
so let's talk about how much money they had in that bank and how much was in reserves.
Well, that's a really good question. So first off, Silicon Valley Bank was the 16th largest bank in the United States. And now they are the second largest bank failure to date, and then right behind them, Signature. They're the third largest. So Silicon Valley had $209 billion in assets, and of that, they had about $175 billion in deposits from customers. Now, you asked about the reserve amount.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So the Federal Reserve requires 10% reserve.
Right.
So meaning if they have $175 billion in deposits, then they're required to have at least 10% of that in liquid cash for
Which is what, 17.5 billion?
It's a big number.
It's a big number, a bigger number than we'll ever see in our lifetime.
Yeah. And even that, if there's some sort of panic, that's going on and everyone rushes to the bank because they're scared their money's going to disappear, 10% is not going to last anytime. But for day-to-day operations, people go in and transact business, and it's going to be fine. And
I think most of us had not really heard of this, and if we did hear about it, we were just kind of like, turn the page. Because as Todd mentioned, these are big dollar amounts, right? This is hitting a lot of big tech corporations. So this is like the Microsoft, the Google. These are the companies that they're doing business with, and these are the dollar amounts they're doing business in, and it affects the payroll of their people. If it was affecting people like you and I, then we would have all heard about it, and maybe we would have all been rushing to the bank to go pull our money and cause something else bad to happen.
Yeah, well, that's an important thing that you bring up, because the FDIC insures, that's federally insured money by the government for up to $250,000, as I'm sure you all know,
right,
per account.
Right.
But really, what that's intended for is for the average Joe like you and I, the people that have their money in banks like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, Citigroup.
So for companies like this that have like these billions of dollars, if they're only 250,000 is being protected, I mean, really, what does that do for them? It does a lot for us, but not for them.
They're the 1%. I mean, Silicon Bank. They're a tech elite bank. So they're all very, very wealthy individuals and corporations that have their money in there. And
so with that being said, the reserve requirements, just want to go back to something that we also read, and I'll read it to you. As announced on March 15th of 2020, the board reduced reserve requirement ratios to 0% effective March 26th of 2020. Mm-hmm. This action eliminated reserve requirements for all depository institutions. So, as of 3 years ago, exactly on March 15th, they decided that you're not even required to do the 10%. Well, what happened 3 years ago? COVID. Yep. So everybody was relaxed and removing this and that, but here's where we're at. They haven't set that reserve back up. So banks aren't even required to do that. And
there's just so much uncertainty. We talked about perception. So we read the little Twitter tweets on perception. Well, that's exactly what happened with the Silicon Bank customers. They saw what was happening with Silvergate, and at the same day, just unfortunate timing that they announced their safety net, everyone got worried, thought the bank was crashing, ran to the bank to pull all of their money out. There was no liquidity, and so the bank became insolvent immedially, and the FDIC had to step in. So
I had someone call me today and ask, hey, should I take my money out of the bank? I've been hearing all kinds of things going on with the banks, and here is where I'm going to give some common sense advice. This has been around for the longest time ever. And number one, don't have your eggs all in one basket. You should have your money in a couple of different financial institutes. You should have one at least like in a local credit union. And so that way that 250 tag, it's per account. So if you have all your money in one and it's over that amount, you're only going to have 250 covered. But if you have it in different institutes, then you'll get covered at each of those. And the second part of that is, whether you should withdraw or not, I was raised that you should always have cash on hand. So you should always have some reserve at home. So if there's an emergency and something happens, if you can't get to the ATM or the ATMs aren't working, you have access to being able to go pull cash for whatever emergency may come your
Go
way.
to the grocery store,
So
get some food.
it doesn't mean go take all your money out, but have something on hand that you can get to really quick if you needed to.
Because we still do accept cash in most of our society.
In most of the society, yes.
Yeah, I agree. That's common sense, especially nowadays. It just makes sense to have a little bit of cash on hand if you can, and to not have it all in one spot, just like you said.
So that so that kind of covers what we wanted to talk about today. We just wanted to keep up and let you know what we're hearing. Whatever you're hearing, if you've had a different view on it, or you've heard something a little more in depth, or just any comments that you want to put, please put them below in the comment section. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Because we are not experts.
No, we are not. We are just trying to find out what's going on. And here's the third common sense thing I will put out there is, a lot of times what we hear on the just on the news channels, we just hear like that. It's just like the icing. It's like they just sliced it off the top and gave it to us.
Because they don't want us to know everything, I don't think.
And what I would tell you is, what does your gut tell you? If your gut is telling you, there's something more, then go online and do some investigating, or, do however you get your information. Go check with a couple of different sources. But go with your gut feeling, because that's a safety net for us. We have that for a reason, and we need to really learn to rely on it, because a lot of times that's where our common sense comes from.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So I don't have my sheet. I know I printed it out with the interest rates on here. We had them last week.
Oh.
The 30-year fixed conventional was right at 7%. I think it was at 6.99.
It's at 6.25 for the 30-year
No, it was at 6.5.
this week.
Yeah, 6.5 as of today. When I
As of
printed it
today.
out from Mortgage News Daily, it was at 30-year fixed was at 6.5, and then I believe
15.
in FH, yes, the 15.
The 15 was
15 was at
6.25.
6. Yes, it was at 6.
You can
Did
tell.
you look yourself, or what?
I had looked at it when you had it.
Oh, okay.
I was
okay.
watching. I was reading.
Okay.
It's what I do.
She was spying on me.
It wasn't spying if it's out in the open.
So the good news is the rates have gone down roughly half a point across the board from this time last week when we came to you. The other thing that I'm reading is based on what has happened with these banks. That does have a potential contagion effect with everyone wanting to maybe run to the bank and pull their cash out. So what I am reading, and now across multiple sources, is most people are predicting that the Fed's going to have absolutely no choice but to immediately stop raising the rates and start bringing them back down. The potential problem with that is more inflation. And there's also a potential problem with the way they bailed out both of these two large banks, when technically they were only obligated to the $250,000 per account, but they're making them all 100% whole. Although that's really good for everyone involved, that potentially sets a very dangerous precedent for other banks that are maybe fiscally mismanaged.
So we're going to end it with a tip for our industry, which is real estate. If you're in the process of buying a home, or you're in escrow, or looking to buy, make sure you leave your money in the bank and not in the mattress, because you're going to need that for your down payment.
Yes, our dog's back here making all kinds of noise.
He's saying we got to go. So anyway, with
But
that,
Friday is
St. Patrick's
Day. Go have a good time, get a green beer.
Day. And we'll see you soon.
All right, bye-bye. Until next week.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Coffee and Common Sense podcast with Todd and Linda. We hope you had a good time and look forward to seeing you all next week.